Welcome to the Power of Decision with transformational life coach Christi Corradi. This series is based on a book of the same name, The Power of Decision by Raymond Charles Barker. Our focus will be on understanding how our decision making impacts our lives and how we can overcome indecision to align with our true vision and live without failure. This is lesson 1.
Hello and welcome. Here we go. I am so excited. This is week 1 of The Power of Decision. And let's get started right where we always get started. And so you may want to have somewhere to write down your gratitudes, proud of, your vision statement. And I'm even going to ask you for some action steps today. And I will lead by example here. So first of all, my gratitude is that I will be seeing Aaron this weekend, first time since he's both gone off to college and turned 18. Yay. And I am proud of how I've navigated this time with him being away and kind of, wanting to have mama hands on and have mama hands off in general. And I feel proud of how I've navigated that. And so I am so happy and grateful now that I am the woman who is lying on the beach on a wonderful vacation after a wonderful week of leading a retreat in the Italian Mediterranean. And I'm laying on the beach in a nice beach resort, but kind of private area that we're at. And I'm joined by friends and my husband, and my son is popping in as well. And I just love this life, love that way of being. And my action steps are going to pack to go to Santa Fe. One of the things I love about this creation of this work that I've created is that I get to be mobile with this type of work. Okay, hello, and here we are, The Power of Decision, a step-by-step program to overcome indecision and live without failure. The book by Raymond Charles Barker. The moment you make a decision, your mind knows exactly what to do to bring it into reality, your mind, like the big M mind. But it is those secondary thoughts of doubt and fear that undermine us. And I invite you to turn up the volume on your awareness, and we will explore using those secondary thoughts of doubt and fear to understand what is limiting us and help us begin to repattern those thoughts. But we must be willing to get uncomfortable. Our old habits are not only strong, but they tend to be invisible to us. We don't even realize or know they're running us. The statistic is 90% of our thoughts are recycled. It's kind of like, where are the new thoughts and the new ideas? And we will raise our awareness and install a new operating system. Are you in? Yes, I'm in. This week, I will be sharing the information from The Power of Decision, the book by Raymond Charles Barker, from the first chapter, The Intelligence Factor. I have a feeling that these were talks that he did, and then it was like put together in a book in a process. But indecision and decision is really covered in the intelligence factor. It's also covered everywhere, right? But next week, we'll primarily look at indecision and decision. I'm not going to leave it in the, we're not going to do a week on indecision. I've got enough indecision of my own. I don't need to add to that, right? So you'll read this week chapter 1 and next week chapter 2 and chapter 3. We have these 4 chapters in here: decide to be happy, decide to live richly, decide to be healthy, decide to be creative. I encourage you to choose one of those that is maybe what you want to work on right now and read that as well along with supplemental. Now, week 3 will be a kind of a shallow dive into those, or I'll be taking a look at what we are finding as the richest piece of material and move into during that week 3. And then the last week, we're going to do Chapter 8, Decision, Decision, Decision. There is an appendix in here, The Power of Decision Success Plan. Now, I have a new supplemental form for that rather than using the one that's outlined in here. However, I did not explain the 3 different areas that I'm having you work on. So you can read that at any time, The Power of Decision, Success Plan, that's on page 202. And read the descriptions, and you'll see where I'm going with the supplemental that you should have in your email. Now, my intention of how this works is that on a daily basis, maybe at night, like when you've concluded your day, you open up that document I sent, just briefly answer those questions, and not all of them need to be answered. They're not all going to be filled out. Just they're to prompt you to think about, what was my day like? What was my thinking like? Where did I have this come up, this and that? And then from that, I can really help you unlock the habitual thinking that you've been having that has kept you from your dream. And so this week you'll read chapter 1, next week 2 and 3. You'll choose any of the next 4 chapters to read throughout these 4 weeks, and you can even go on to another one as you want. And then the last week we'll just conclude with taking a look at decision. It's all about the power of decision, a step-by-step program to overcome indecision and live without failure. So although I never saw Raymond Charles Barker in person, I do know both Reverend Lloyd Tupper and Reverend Carol Huntley, who wrote the introduction and the preface or whatever in the book. And I know Lloyd, and I hear him so clearly in this work. It's the absoluteness. It's kind of like, get on the bandwagon or get off. There's some other phrase. My husband always laughs at me for me mixing up phrases. Anyway, it's about that absoluteness. And so sometimes it sounds a little harsh, and sometimes there's a lot of do nots in here. And I actually want to bring this on the table for a reason. And we'll talk about that as we go along. So we're jumping into chapter 1 here. The premise here is that the universe, the divine, God, always acts in its intelligence. On page 1, it says the creative process individualized as man is his capacity for right decision. So that means that we all have right decision, the capacity, right? Capacity doesn't mean that we use it. Capacity means that it's available to us. And the second premise here is that the universe always responds intelligently. So if that's true, how did we end up in struggle? Back when I first came into this work 30 years ago, and I've heard it many years over the time, that says the universe always says yes. And at the time I heard that, that was very powerful because it really helped me pay attention to my thinking. If the universe always says yes to my thoughts, then I better pay attention to my thoughts, right? To what I ask for, dream for, think, in the direction of my thoughts. But we're going a little deeper in this study, and I've studied this for 30 years now. And there is the mechanical law that always says yes, but then there is the intelligence, the divine God that actually has intelligence working with it. And the law is like electricity and thermodynamics, and the intelligence is kind of like how it shows up in the world. So it's kind of like when we choose to use, say, electricity wrongly, then we get the shock or the struggle or whatever. So the universe still responds intelligently. It's just what we've input into it or our use of it. And often it's our idea that we want to control the way things work, and we just can't. You can't change the way that electricity operates, only in how you implement it. And it's the same way with the law. So that's what causes the struggle. That's what causes the disconnect, right? And what are maybe unintelligent thoughts that we might think? Doubt that we are worthy or capable, or fear that we're the great exception to being happy, successful, and fulfilled. And you can see how that's discordant with the natural impulse, direction, flow of the universe. It is that flow and direction is that of being happy, successful, and fulfilled. I mean, think of the vibrational frequency of those energies. So this month, we are going to use our discontents, the fear, doubt, and worry, right, to discover what erroneous thoughts we're having. Now, the important thing here is not to dwell on them. Remember, what we give attention to, we create. But what we're working on here is bringing the subconscious up to the surface. So then if we don't know what replacement thoughts to have, we can't do that. If you keep doing the same thing over and over, if you keep getting the same result over and over, let's take a look at figuring out what is the limiting thought, but don't focus on it. Don't pay attention to it. And so that's what we're going to do this month, and I'm going to assist you in that. And so I've sent you out the supplemental, and use it and make sure that at the step 3 is to write the replacement thought, the remedy, okay? But do write down the other 2 categories there, and I think you're going to find that something really interesting is going to happen through this process, and it's for your benefit, right? Just glancing here on page 7, it says, you are not the problem. You are intelligence capable of knowing the right idea at the right time to make the right decision. See, just like you're not your history and you are not your problem. You are a divine being, and the problem is merely an indicator of where you're off course. So on page 8, under Watch Your Alibis, he says, gradually whittle away your deeply rooted failure patterns and replace them with new self-acceptance concepts that will cause you to create what you want in the world. There's just so much good stuff in here. So you want to read this stuff. You want to take a deeper dive, and this is just to get you going on taking a look at this. Through this work, we will begin to learn not to blame the world, the circumstances, or the other person, right? We've talked about that many times, but that's a disempowering place. There's no action that we can take if we're in blame, right? But if we are empowered to make our own, to have our own thoughts and to make our own decisions, then we have the opportunity to repattern the limiting thoughts that we have. And you know what's really interesting about this? No, we cannot change the outside experiences, but I will tell you that the more you stay in this pattern, this frequency of thinking, the more those outside things will not happen to you. And when they do, you will have a totally different response to them. But what will be interesting is if you ask for freer flowing time, freedom of time, and if you hold that's your divine right, and you hold that vibrational frequency that that's who you are, you will be amazed at the decisions that used to be made that took up your time by someone else even, now all of a sudden is making new decisions. Okay, now you didn't cause that to happen other than in your thinking there is no more void for it to be filled in that way. I mean, this is really, really interesting. It's very powerful. And how much of the day do we go unconscious to this? So on page 9, the section there, problems do not improve you. So you no longer blame the world. They kind of mentioned that. So at the bottom there, it's talking about this story from the Bible, but he says, the man was cleared of years of negative thinking, years of worry and defeat. It was a new man who went on his way rejoicing in his health. You can do the same thing when you conceive yourself as intelligent in action. Everything creative responds within your mind when you give it intelligent decisions. So our practice is really in creating intelligent decisions. And what I have found in this work is that I would love to think that I was as grand a coach as Jesus was, to say just stand up and walk. And in the meantime, until I get there, I'm going to help you take a kind glance at the things that are holding you back, finding what the underlying belief is there, and then really cranking it, turning it up to the vibration of the life that you want to live. Sometimes I think it's kind of like a spiritual bypass to think, oh, I'm just going to stand up and walk. Yes, that's true and absolute. I don't want to take any power off of that. And also, when that's not working for us, when we're not at that current capacity, then we need to find ways, tools, to move to that step. And I think so often people get tripped up on the idea of, well, I'm not having the results I'm having, but I don't know what the underlying belief is. And so that's what we're going to discover, especially in the first part of this month as we do this. Now, it's not really about digging up the past and saying, oh, my mom did this to me or this or that. We'll go through this a little bit more about how the process works. It's more like you go, oh, look, isn't that interesting? I'm thinking that. Here's an example. My current dream and longing in my 3 to 5 year vision is to do these awesome retreats. So I came up with a plan, and the plan was to become a great speaker and coach. And the other day, I just all of a sudden went, well, yes, that is one way, but that is not the only way. So when I say I want to do awesome retreats, the doubt, what is the doubt thought that I'm having? Oh, well, I'm not magnetic enough for people to want to come on this trip with me. Okay, so then I can take a look at that and say, I don't have to go back and say, you know, when I was teased in middle school, that maybe, no, I just have to say, oh, isn't that interesting? I don't think that I'm magnetic enough for people to want. And then I just put in the replacement thought of, I am magnetic. I serve people, and as I serve people, they are attracted to me. So that's how we're going to work with this week. So you don't fret. The whole reason that I'm a coach rather than I do still do art therapy, but the regressive nature of therapy, of having to go and dig up the past, to me it's rewounding and rewounding. And yes, we can take a kind glance at our past and use it as a wonderful stepping stone and say, thank you for serving me, and now I'm going to have my new replacement thought. So this is not going into the depths of our dark past. So to move on, the law that I talked about, it always responds the same. This is like cause and effect. So I have this great example that I used. I actually filmed a video of this, and I used it with teenagers for years, and it's really fun. You guys will know. They didn't know who Julia Childs was, so it wasn't so fun. But I went in with little accents, like Julia Childs, my best version of it, and I brought in a shopping bag, and there was a blender, and I put on an apron and everything. I said, okay, this is the law. This blender is the law. It responds the same to everything that I put into it, and this is the law of cause and effect. And then I would pull out all these wonderful groceries. Smell this coffee, doesn't smell delicious, and a little sorbet here, and some nice milk, and some tobacco. All of these are wonderful things. But I get to choose what I put in the blender, and I start mixing it up and putting in the coffee beans and the sorbet and the Tabasco, and then it's really fun because when you turn on the blender, it just goes chung, 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 chung. But the law still responds to it. It grinds it up, it blends it up, and then I pour it into a glass, and everybody goes, yuck. I said, so what we want to do with the law is we want to choose what we put into the law. So we choose, maybe we're doing a coffee drink, so we can take some ice cream and some coffee extract and a little bit of milk and put that in and blend that up. Or maybe it's a sorbet or a smoothie, or maybe it's a healthy green drink, right? We get to choose what we put into it, but only if we're conscious about it. And there's this really great explanation here on page 10 under cause and effect. He talks about the idea that the sun is not to blame for the shadow. The sun is doing what it always does. It's the object that is in the way. I just think it's really clever how he mentions if you're facing the shadow, you're aware of it and you're paying attention to the shadow. And when you turn to the sun, you don't even know about the shadow. Now, we can look at this in two ways. If the shadow continues to get in your way to trip us up, then we begin to get curious and think, why does this keep tripping us up? Another story about doing this. So I was out camping with this friend of mine, and this was probably about 30 years ago, because it was when I was first getting into this thinking. And, there's an arrogance when it's like all of a sudden, wow, I'm learning about the invisible principles, and then you want to change everybody, and you want to tell everybody how this works. Well, I went camping with this girlfriend up to these hot springs. And we went to the campground nearby, and there was actually this guy that was tending a fire. And we sat and talked all night, and this guy tended a fire. And we were talking philosophy, and because I was really beginning to understand these principles, and it was like the world was as expansive as the stars that were above our heads, just like the Milky Way and everything. And we were just like deep dive, and she was like, oh my gosh, look at my life and how I've done this. And she says, I don't understand why. She says, but I got to go out to the woods. So this guy tending the fire says, here, take this little lantern. And he had a lantern that he'd taken a tin can and split open the side of it, and there's a hole in the top, and put a candle in it. So it's this little homemade lantern that we took out to the woods with us. And she's talking as we're tromping out to the woods. She's crying, actually, and she sets the lantern down and, of course, kind of turns away, to have some privacy. And all of a sudden, she just started laughing. She goes, oh, my gosh, I'm blocking my own light. And it was just like this experience of turning toward the light, right? And so that's the second way that we can look at this idea that we want to shift our attention away from the concern of the problem and give that same amount of thinking and feeling or more to the awareness of that intelligence, right? The fact that there is an intelligence, and align ourselves with it. And then the right idea will happen in our thinking. Wow. You guys know I get excited about this work, right? On page 11, will it work? The end of that paragraph. This teaching will work as you introduce creative new ideas into the universal intelligence that is mind. You will bring forth what you want when you want it. Now, this is with sustained thinking, and I'll talk about that in a minute here. And as I mentioned, we must get uncomfortable, and the first step of that discomfort is really being willing to challenge our habits and beliefs. They served us really well. They think they're doing a really good job, and they're going to try to convince you of that. And they're doing such a great job, you don't even know what they are. You don't even know the thoughts that are running you, and that's what we're working on discovering this month. And here's an example of that. I had a client who her dream was to build a home, like a community with a school on it and everything for people in transition from poverty into success. And man, what a beautiful dream. So as I'm having her, what would I love? And she describes it, describes the building, describes how it runs, and then her piece into it comes. It's like, yes, she's the director, and she actually has somebody that does the things that she doesn't want. And then I said, so what's your income for this? And she says, well, I don't need a lot. I don't really want to take away from the client that I'm serving. And I don't need much. I don't need much compensation. So then I asked her to dream for one of her fictitious clients. And when she did this, she said, so this woman, that's my client, she gets on her feet, she's found a job that she loves, she's doing well, she's, making great money, she's paying her bills easily, and she's being able to travel, and and then all of a sudden she got it, right? She discovered that she had an underlying belief about money, that other people should move to this great and wonderful life, but she had a belief that a lot of us have this thought that it's more pious or whatever to serve, and we should serve unconditionally, but we also, in order to continue to do our work, be well compensated. And this universe wants us to be free and wants us to have fun. I mean, the universal principle, God is fun. So on page 13, your mind, being the center and circumferences of your experience, can and will create what you want when you think it, when you feel it, and what you want. Now, again, with sustained thinking. So somebody said, oh, I thought that and it didn't work. I dreamed that up and it didn't work. This is with sustained thinking. Remember, we've talked about how many days it takes to change a habit. So it's with sustained thinking. So under reverse your mental image, we will do this work. And through doing this work, you will correct your own thinking and create your own heaven on earth. You will make decisions to be the creative centers of your own experience, and you will no longer blame others. And you will become the expert, not necessarily believing in others, and you'll reverse your thinking and make certain that it agrees with your goals and decisions, right? This is where we test our thoughts. Are they turning us in the direction of our dream, right? Ask yourself that every thought. So here is an affirmation, and this is part of the work that we're going to be doing, is really holding these. I am the creative center of my own experience. I am the creative center of my own experience. Now, that is not in and of ourselves. Remember our 5-step question, one of it is, do I need a higher power? But you are the center, right? Because that's what we have been created to be, is a manifester, is first a receptor and then a producer of the image and likeness of the divine, right? So I am the creative center of my own experience. This is a lot of good stuff. So on page 23, I have said earlier in this chapter that all problems are the result of unintelligent thinking and feeling in a field of intelligence that must assume what you are thinking and feeling is what you really want to have as your experience. In any problem, a new train of ideas is the beginning of the cure, but the new ideas must fascinate your attention. Old ideas have a tremendous hold on your subconscious mind. They are familiar territory. They require no great mental effort to keep themselves activated. You rethink them with ease. Remember, 90% of your thoughts, right? You have already convinced your subconscious mind that they are valid and warrant its continued operation. Such comfortable states of consciousness are hypnotic and should be avoided. It takes courage to shake off the routines of comfort and start adventuring with control of your own life. Here is where the important role of decision comes in. The decision to stay as you are, for you are at home with your present limitation, that's one choice, or the decision to be uncomfortable for a while and gradually enjoy new horizons of living. The law of mind leaves you free to stay as you are and keep hatching up the present and living in false hope that tomorrow will be better, or free to grasp the reins of mind and emotion and emerge from the cocoon of the usual into the wide new world of the unusual. On page 24, the ideas are fascinating. You are a thinker. You can select the ideas you want and proceed to think them. And then in closing on page 26, you are not an observer of the universe. You are a vital participant of the universe. Let no one ever again tell you of your unimportance. God did not make a mistake when you were born. Intelligence created you to live in these times because you are equipped to meet the challenges of these times. You are equipped to meet the challenges of this time. You are the right person in the right place to create a right world for yourself, and you know what? For everyone around you as well. So work on that worksheet. You look at it and think back through the thoughts you had through the course of the day. We're going to work on our daily thinking. We're going to wake it up. You make the commitment to yourself, and then you keep it. My recommendation would be daily or weeknights or whatever, that you fill out that form. What this is about is one of the things that I have discovered is that sometimes, yes, we should be able to stand up and walk. We should just be able to heal all of this, but have we? No, we haven't. So let's take another track to getting that done. And what I have found is that we sometimes don't know what habits are keeping us from our goodness of having the life that we want. So this is 3 activities. One is to ask yourself during the course of the day, what's holding you back? And read the end of the book and then also have the worksheet. And I want you to copy it. Answer the question. It doesn't have to be complete sentences. Not every line needs to be filled out. But what is causing me pain right now? Like when I say, oh, I'm going to do retreats, my little chattery mind, and it's a portion of us. So we have this great believing self, and within us we have these little portions, and often it's a small child part of us, right, that has the little chatter that says, I'm not worthy, I'm not worth it, I'm not magnetic enough, right? And so I need to go out and become magnetic, right? And then I take a look at that and I say, oh, I don't need to go dig it up. I don't need to say, you know, where did that come from at all? I just need to go, you know what? I need to find a replacement thought. I am magnetic. People love traveling with me. People love the work and the way that I serve them. And it changes their lives. I mean, to me, that's the most important thing. And part of changing their lives is like being in this beautiful, glorious environment and really seeing their worth and blah, 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 blah. So when you make your vision statement, does anybody have a rattle or a chatter around, oh, that couldn't be so? And so work on that worksheet. And even if it's a word or a sentence or a thought that comes up, we want to unpack as much of this as we can this month. And let's be done with it. Let's get on. Get through this month. Let it go. Get your remedy thoughts in you all the time.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Here are 2 exclusive podcast listener offers. First, for a limited time, podcast listeners can work with Christi in person at a deep discount. Christi offers a unique coaching modality of her own creation that helps clients discover their own answers to where they're stuck and how to move forward. As one of her clients puts it, it always works. This transformative process is designed to help you identify blocks and create breakthroughs in your personal and professional life. As a thank you for listening to the podcast, you're eligible for a special discount. Normally $97 for a half-hour introductory session, podcast listeners get a $70 discount automatically applied if you use this link, masteringtheartoflife.com/podcast-IWD-offer. That's masteringtheartoflife.com/podcast-IWD-offer. And that link is in the podcast general description as well. Second, you can get the entire library of Mastering the Art of Life with PDF notes and worksheets for each lesson, plus bonuses at no cost at masteringtheartoflife.com/9-month opt-in, all one word, masteringtheartoflife.com/9-month opt-in. That link is also in the general podcast description.